Brandon Miller put together an excellent freshman season for Alabama, becoming a first-team All-American on one of the best teams in the country for most of the year, and though they got stopped short in the tourney and he struggled in the process, albeit battling an injury, he still proved himself as one of the better prospects in the class. At 6'9" with a smooth game, he consistently showed his ability to knock down threes in a variety of ways, make tough shots, plays for others, and also play solid defense, and all that combined with the improvements that he made along the way have gotten some to consider him as high as the number 2 pick in the draft. Now, Brandon Miller was easily one of the best three-point shooters in college for most of the season, and his combination of size, fluidity, and versatility in the ways that he took them make him one of the better shooting prospects in the class, and it's even more impressive considering this was actually a question mark for him coming into college. His footwork is still a little inconsistent, but he's already much better than a lot of the stuff I saw from him in high school, and he often went off the hop, some 1-2 and hybrid at times, and he got his shot off fairly quickly considering his deeper dip and lower release point. He was at about 40% on all of his catch and shoot threes, and of those that were unguarded, he was knocking on the door of 50% even with the late season slump. He's someone who projects really well as a spot up guy, just playing off the attention his teammates draw and being able to stretch the defense in that way, and also as that weak side guy in the pick and roll, dripped into the corner or lifting and shaking up, or even running in transition and knocking him down as a trail man.
Jimmy comes towards you, look at the range. Gurley. Where's your get back defense if you're the Aggies? Wasn't there. Shoot after that hustle play. Bama, Miller, yeah.
Miller was also very good in more movement type of situations, showing off his ability to organize quickly and get right into his shot. He projects as someone who will get his share of looks off of pin downs, but he was also really effective off dribble handoffs and little ghost screens up top. He had a few rush or errant attempts in there, but I buy the fluidity, and for the most part he was able to get organized and square in the air. And doing all of this at legit wing/forward size only makes it more impressive and something that can be weaponized to open up the rest of his game in the future.
Tested from play. Wow, that is in a game like this. No question, right? Yeah, just body on body. Layers of switch.
Yeah, and he got open on that one.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons why I think not only them, but Arkansas has a nice chance to advance.
Rivalry. Now in the game of basketball as well. Uh-oh, that's trouble. Yes, it is.
By the way, you're talking about the John Morant recruiting and Miller.
Go fire. Knock it down.
You mentioned third in the country in possession time, 15 seconds per possession.
While it's not fully there, and there are some things that he'll need to work on to realize more of this, he does have some intriguing upside as a self-creator and showed more of it as the year went on. He took a good amount of threes off the dribble in a variety of situations, and his pickups there were pretty consistently great. A little less than half of those off the dribble looks came in the pick and roll. Now, he wasn't nearly as efficient as I thought he'd end up, but he showed a lot of pieces, playing with great pace, setting up screens, snaking in, properly using the seal, among other things, and I think he could find some there in the future.
Absolutely feeling it. Draws a lot of attention. Pulls the trigger deep.
Miller.
Yes!
By the Spartans.
Domwell Chow with a lower body injury. Darius Miles who played the open.
Miller going up against.
Ball pressure is the first thing in post defense. If the passer can't see it, it doesn't matter.
Miller lost his footing and uses his...
Back to Miller. Thought about the shot. Ooh. Creating space for himself.
Bigger than you, I'm stronger than you. I'm going to go where I want to go on the floor and make you pay.
Miller step back three and
Here's Miller. Step back.
Now, ordinarily, you could point to his lack of mid-range attempts as a knock on his projection as a creator, but I think that was much more a product of Alabama's system and influence than it was him, because one of his main strengths in high school was getting to that spot, so I definitely bookmarked that going forward.
Miller, you saw the new career high. Nice defense from Smith. Miller gets it back.
And then as for his handle, he loved using these hezzies, often going left and playing off the threat of his 3-ball. He has some skip jabs and hip swivels in there. Loved using the in and out and curl dribble to set things up. And he threw a few wide crosses in there, which became a lot more effective down the stretch. Now again, with all of this, it's about continuing to make it more functional and create an advantage, but in terms of being able to handle the rock, the fluidity in his motion and ability to get off certain shots at 6'9", there were some exceptionally high moments, many of which swung games completely.
On Moore. Donaldson jumped on him, shot clock at 1.
They're yelling boots.
Buzz Williams says Radford.
I was consistently impressed by his playmaking over the course of the year. He showed he could make all the basic reads both in and out of the pick and roll, throwing lobs, reading the defense, and staying patient. He had some no looks and manipulation in there that got his teammates open, and if you watched at all, you probably saw his love for the one-handed pass, especially with the left, and he made plays in transition too. I don't think he'll be asked to be a lead initiator, but he's someone you're confident in making solid decisions with the ball, and this is an area of his game I don't think should go unnoticed.
As long as we had Maurice Lucas, Lionel Hollins, Johnny Davis, Bobby Gross, and Dave Torgic.
Brandon Miller's got Quinterly with him to help him.
Here is Miller. Baseline kick out.
The game, he was hot as could be because he played better than Austin did.
Second half. That's the only thought that Nate Oates has in his mind right now.
Now Miller feeding Betty up.
Last 4 or 5 years, the hiring of guys like Nate Oates and Eric Musselman. Man, keep those guys in this league at Oklahoma, Texas. Whoa, what a pass!
See, that's what you talked about the freshmen. That's the upside. They can get much better on the glass and defensive rebound.
And Brandon Miller in transition finds Clowney.
The leading scorer among freshmen in the nation at just over 9.
Man. And then he looked right at Brandon Miller and said, hey, man, you got to get out and guard someone.
Bama looking for its first lead of the night. They'll get it.
And then defensively, I wouldn't say Miller projects as a guy who's ever going to be super impactful, both shutting guys down on the perimeter and then getting a bunch of steals, blocks, and deflections, but he's solid and likely won't be a liability. He doesn't make too many mistakes, he's in the right spots, he's got solid length, came up with a good amount of chase downs and finished possessions, averaging over 8 boards a night. And though you like a little more activity from him, and maybe that pops in the right spot, that's all you really need from him. Continuing to get stronger and adding weight will give him more versatility and allow him to hang with some of the bigger wings and forwards in the league, but for now, I don't have too many complaints on this end, and that's a positive.
So we got it poked away. Tries again. Miller the tip.
Regard than people think.
Spoke on that yesterday. He said, we don't have the best players. We've never had the best players. We don't
get it going from behind the arc. 3 for 26.
That was Dia on the shot for Vanderbilt in the last possession. The kick out.
You would know.
I'm asking you.
UConn, no. Running the floor. Adama Sanogo is blocked.
Young plays.
3 missed it. Here's Johnson full throttle. Rejected.
Like we alluded to with the self-creation, one of the bigger improvement areas or spots of concern for him is in his first step and getting paint touches and ability to create separation off the bounce. He's simply not the quickest guy, he's not super shifty, he's also not physically imposing, and at times it made it difficult for him to create an advantage, especially against the more physical and athletic teams that he faced this year.
Miller hounded. Miller got the shot
Looking off to the high ball screen as a 6'9" 2-guard. Oklahoma covers it up well.
Miller is doing an awful lot of dribbling early on here, and that's turning up
the heat defensively.
offensively too. 7 field goals. There's another block. Sports.com and the CBS Sports app. We will get you to Madison Square Garden as soon as this one is over.
Clock under 10 for Miller. Harassed by Golston. Now double.
Now, it's far from impossible that he continues to grow here, especially considering what he did over the course of the season in comparison to the beginning, and I do think he's crafty and skilled enough to make things happen. But heading to the NBA, he's going to have to focus on continuing to develop physically and athletically to fully realize more of that upside, and that becomes even more of a pressing issue if you're pinning him as that number 2 prospect.
Screen in the middle of the floor, they'll set a ball screen. Oh, that's good play.
Miller takes it strong. Miller with
lose, and you want to go see your families, but you want to make sure that you stay disciplined. Here's Miller.
Oh, wow.
We talked about the creation, but the area that had the biggest contrast from beginning to end was in his finishing. He was noticeably bad in a way that was very concerning for a 6'9" guy struggling to elevate in traffic and play through contact. He also forced some tough shots, and the percentages showed it in every way, shooting just 41% in his first 10 games. But in the middle of the season, he started to fix it, better using his body, driving harder, and even elevating over some guys for a few big-time finishes. And that was impressive and definitely something I didn't expect to see so quickly. And going from 41% at the bucket to 65% in the next 27 games is pretty ridiculous and should be recognized as such. However, I do think it should still be highlighted as an area he can continue to work on. Some of those earlier elements still showed up from time to time in playing through contact and elevating in close quarters, and he was at about 39% again in those last 7 games, albeit he was a little banged up. But at the next level is something he'll need to keep a point of emphasis on, and hopefully that rapid improvement will continue even against the higher level athletes.
Freshman of the country this year. Miller with 3. Miller to the rim. Miller with the left hand.
Tough match. Got to get some help.
Huge size advantage.
It is 10.
That's good and that's huge.
Miller to the hole. No good. Follow.
Miller swatted away. The pro floor really opens up. He's going to impact his team next year.
Other than those 2 areas and continuing to get stronger and work on his body, there's not much significant to pick at with B. Miller, and that's part of the reason he is as appealing as he is as a prospect. But there's still some smaller things in there. He can still tighten up the handle a little in terms of ball security, a few things defensively, and I do think it's worth mentioning that he shot just 32% from 3 and about 39% from 2 against top 50 competition this year, according to Bart Torvik. I think it speaks to those specific areas we already talked about in the attention that those teams were giving him, but the contrast was at least worth bringing up.
Team by Houston. Arkansas got cross-matched and immediately got Digo Davis back on Miller.
I think Brandon Miller is pretty safely a top 5 pick and would be the favorite to go number 3 at this point. I'm a little more skeptical of him at number 2, but I know what he brings to the table and I'm confident he'll contribute at a high level. The ceiling and floors are always just a rough estimate, but I think he could get into that couple time fringe all-star range if he hits on certain things in terms of the creation and at least be a starter level guy worst case. As for fit in the draft range, I like him in Detroit next to their playmakers. I think Orlando, Indiana, and Portland would be pretty excited to land him if they can get into that range, and to me, as long as he's not overextended with some of that creation stuff, he'll be golden pretty much anywhere. There is some Chris Middleton in there with him, a sort of methodical scoring and playmaking wing who can do it both on and off the ball. Now, I'm a little hesitant just given how good Middleton got as the number 2 and sometimes go-to shot maker on a champion, but there's enough there in terms of similarities in their games, both positively and negatively.
At a franchise record-setting 3-point makes it.
1 and 3.
There's him out. Man, beat it. Scram, Sam.
Now, it's not my job to belabor over at this point, but I do have to mention it because it is part of his story. Teams will do their due diligence and ask his perspective on the legal situation his name was part of earlier in the year, but unless some new information comes out, I don't think it'll affect his stock. But to wrap it up, Brandon Miller is one of the best prospects in this draft class, and the way that he adapted and improved on his weaker areas during the season was as impressive as any singular part of his game. And even with some of the hesitations, a 6'9" wing with his skill set is surely going to make a big impact in the NBA.